Last name's Jacquard. Hoping you'll all learn something today. So first of all, I want to tell you, this is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, please hop off now. Through this, my partner in crime, Tom Zalewski, will be answering questions in chat if you have any. First of all, again, I want to welcome you. Hopefully, again, you'll learn something new. And with that, just briefly, I want to turn it over to my boss, Dan Kennedy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's event. We're super excited to get this all for you. One of the things we'll be covering quite a bit of material in here, and specifically around how Microsoft's native cloud stack provides a lot of the security tools and some of those components for you to be able to mature that security level. And so if you stick around towards the end, we'll give you a little bit of guidance on where to start with that. So again, welcome. And Mark, back to you.
We'll go to Tom. Tom, tell everybody about yourself, just so they know when you're answering chat who you are.
Hey, everybody. Tom Zalewski. I've been doing security assessments on the Azure side for a number of years now. So if you have any questions, just fire away. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. Mark does a nice job. So let's go, Mark.
Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome again. So we're going to start off. First of all, as security people, we're all pretty familiar about all the security threats, how things change on a dime. Things change rapidly. So for instance, the newest, latest, greatest thing just came out, Log4j. So if you use Apache logs and you're using that Log4j for Java logging, guess what? You probably need to go patch your boxes. But there are a lot of challenges. There's not just patching. There's not just exploits. It's about control. We have to look at security from a holistic point of view. Where's that start? Usually compliance. What do I have to be compliant with? Well, I have policies. My CISO, my boss, whatever says, hey, you have to enforce these policies. Show me that you're doing it. An auditor will look. 68% of breaches are going to take months or longer to discover, and that's a fact. It can go fly under the radar for a very long time, depending on the tools that they're using. In 2019, saw a 95% increase in the cost of a breach, averaging about $5.16 million for an average breach in an enterprise. Workloads change. Again, we transition from on-prem to cloud. It's a different architecture. We are learning as we go in many aspects how to secure that infrastructure. And the products are morphing in order to look at that. We've seen so many increases in the level of sophistication that bad actors take. Again, I remember way back in the day when pretty much 50% of all exploits started with a buffer overflow. That's not that way nowadays. Those bad actors have changed their methodology. They're looking at different stacks, different ways of getting in. It's not always about, hey, let's hack through the firewall. A lot of times now it's about identity. I want to get that user ID. I want to know who that person is, because then I can exploit that user ID to get me in the door. So we're going to have a zero trust conversation. Why are we having a zero trust conversation? Hey, that's a great question. The methodology has changed. We're all pretty familiar with on-prem. Yeah, we've got a firewall. Things are kind of secure behind that firewall. But hey, that firewall, that IDS, that IPS, that proxy server, hey, all that's going to protect me. That's not really true anymore. Security is very complex. We've got many devices, users, connections. Now with COVID, we've got most of those users not even in an office behind that firewall. It's very complex. How do we protect all of those? How do we ensure the gateway that those end users are actually secure? We need to look at all of that information. The whole trusted network. defense in depth. Think of it as militaristic. That's how the military does things. Hey, you know, we've got all these tanks on the front row. We got big guns in the back. You know, we can blow them up. Well, that's kind of where that defense in depth strategy came from, that trusted network. We're on the trusted side of the network. You know, they've got to break through our firewall to get there. You know, okay. But that's not how it works in cloud. That's not how it works in an integrated hybrid environment anymore. We accepted risk at lower security zones. The military still does that. They have all these different networks, red, green, blue, and depending on which network you are, dictates the policy that gets applied to those networks. We do the same. In the private industry, we have segmented networks that are more secure than others and all of that. But it's about all of these other devices now. Bring your own, mobile, software as a service. Those bad actors have changed their methodology. I don't know if you've noticed, but I sure have. Over the last probably 5 years, so many different phishing attacks, spam, all of that to get you to give their credentials. Now, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to using VMware and stuff like that. So I'll answer some of those just to be fun. But again, it's just what I do, just to see what they're trying to do. I never give them real information. But again, security teams are overwhelmed. And that's a big problem. We can't look at everything. We've got 10 different consoles. How do I put all of this information where I can see it? I can take action on it. How do I secure the environment? First thing is the identity. User access. We need to make sure that you are who you say you are. So now we've gone to a model called Zero Trust that's about explicitly validating the trust of those credentials, dynamically addressing insufficient trust. We're looking at securing the applications everywhere, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. And that's really, really important for knowing what to do. We're looking at modern SecOps. Again, pervasive detection, deep asset visibility outside the firewall. We need to be able to rapidly remediate all of that information. Again, it's huge when it comes to that zero trust model. Looking at data centers, operational technology, data centers, looking at VPN devices. We want to modernize all of that infrastructure. I don't know how many of you ever thought about it, but think about how old your firewalls could be, your routers, your switches. Think about a data center. Some of that technology in that data center, some of those devices could be 50 to 100 years old in that range. That's not a good thing. But what's out there that's better? How do we look at all that IP, all those internet protocols? How do we defend against that in our cloud, in our data centers, when we have a hybrid model? It's all about that zero trust. We don't trust anything. The foundations of zero trust is an architecture that basically institutes a deny until verified. You know, we had the old trust but verify. That didn't work. And that's common when you look at some of the breaches that have happened. With zero trust, it's about verify explicitly who that individual is. Multi-factor authentication, you know, all of those things. Who you know, who you are, what you are, all of that. It's about least privilege access. Okay, just in time, registration, and just enough access. You can actually utilize those principles even for an administrator. You could have checks and balances where administrators have to approve administrative changes. Hey, you know, Tom's going to make this change. He's going to send a request and Mark's going to approve it. How long is it going to take, Tom? 4 hours. Great. Awesome. You are now able to do this, even though he's a global admin. It's about responsibility, trackability, auditing. Minimize the blast radius. Always assume that you're going to get breached. Prevent lateral movement. Look at your network, look at your devices, your apps, all of those things, and start thinking about how you prevent that lateral movement. Because those bad actors are never satisfied with just one system. They want it all. And they're going to try to move through the network. How do I track those people? When you look at Defender for Cloud, all the products mapped to a zero trust model. Now, depending on what you read about zero trust, there are 6 to 8 pillars. That's depending on who wrote the article. For us here at Talon, there are 7 pillars. You'll notice there's this big thing that says security policy enforcement. Security starts with policy. You can go out there and you can deploy all these products. But if you don't have a plan, you don't have a benchmark, you don't have a roadmap as to why you're doing it, you're kind of all over the place. So we have identities, we have devices, we have data, apps, infrastructure, and network. Those are the 6 pillars that we're looking at, the 7th one being policy. If you don't have any policies, it's going to be difficult to know where to start. Zero trust typically starts with identity, the first pillar. We want to secure those identities. We want to then methodically go through, and typically the next step is devices. But it depends on where you are. Think about it as maturity of your organization, but you can see all the different products that are going to help you get there. Then we have analytics. Sentinel, commonly referred to as a SIM, SOAR solution, security orchestration automated response. SIM is a single pane of glass. I can see everything. If I'm logging everything, I can see everything, and I can write use cases and rules and everything else, and I can write automation to remediate it. So when you think of maturity, this is a great model. Where do I start? How long will it take me to get there? Okay, so I start with identity. I'm going to look at my workloads. I'm going to look at my devices, my network, all of those things. One pillar at a time. Secure those identities first. So how long is it going to take you to get all 6 pillars? Well, depends. How many different jobs do you have? Do you have 5 different jobs, 6 different jobs, 10 different jobs? How much time do you get to dedicate to building a security framework that works? Ideally, this is all you do. But we all know that's not reality. But it's all about getting up this maturity model, securing all of those pillars with best practice. How do I get there? What's going to help me get there? Okay. Looking at Microsoft, security, compliance, and identity solutions. Most people don't even think about this, but Microsoft is actually the only cloud vendor who is also a security vendor. It's the only platform built by a security vendor. AWS isn't, Google isn't. Google's a search engine. AWS, hey, you know, we all buy stuff there, especially during these times. So they earn over 10 billion from security revenue alone. So that says something for them. You know, there are other companies out there, but if I put my cloud in an environment that was built by a security vendor, I've got a pretty fair amount of confidence in the ability that they secured that environment before I move my cloud. Now, do I have responsibility as the user? Absolutely. But there are more than 400,000 customers. 90 of the Fortune 100 companies, use Azure. Microsoft has 3,700 security experts, spend over $1 billion annually on security. And I know some of these guys. I actually trained some of these guys in different roles that I had with the government and some other places. So I know their abilities. In 2020, 6 billion malware threats were blocked by Defender. That's pretty good. I don't know what everybody else does, and I'm sure, you know, other AV vendors will say about the same thing. Microsoft actually takes in 8 trillion signals every 24 hours. So what's a signal? That's going out and looking for all of those bad actors. What are they doing? Threat feeds. What am I seeing out there in the wild that all these bad people are doing? And then how do I take those signals and say, hey, that doesn't look right. That's all about behavior. What's normal? What's not normal? AVs work that way all the time. AV solutions now are adaptive. Hey, if it looks like this virus, smells like this virus, it must be that virus. Whether it is or isn't, your product's going to flag it and say, hey, this doesn't look right. You should probably look at it. Looking at a cloud chain kill model. Now, the majority of people are familiar with what's called Lockheed's kill chain methodology. We're familiar with the MITRE matrix of attacks. We get inundated with all of this, but think about your cloud. Adversaries are going to look for multiple exposure points in the cloud, not just one. They're going to be looking at everything that they can see, everything they can touch, and they're going to try to exploit that. They're going to look for insecure applications. They're going to look to see if any of those vulnerabilities that they read about or that they personally learned by exploiting something, if we're vulnerable to it. We're looking at infected admin type resources. Now they're going to see if they can get access. They're going to look and try our virtual machines, our credentials, our web apps. They'll brute force it. They'll look at Internet of Things devices that are connected and try to exploit those. Once they're somewhere, think about it like a spider web. They're going to build different pieces of that web for lateral movement. I'm going to get into the SQL database if I can. I'm going to try to find other virtual machines. Why am I doing that? Okay, let's say the credentials that I had for this virtual machine are not admin credentials. The idea is to escalate my credentials as I go. How can I pull a key? How can I pull some other identity on this other machine? Snoop, sniff. What's the end goal? Data loss, data exfiltration. These are all the things they're trying to do throughout this environment. Now, Defender for Cloud, formerly known as Azure Defender, and then we had Security Center, Microsoft rebranded this. So we look at Defender for Cloud. It's free for all users. For the free piece, it's basically cloud security posture management. Monitor the security. It's a free experience. You're going to get your secure score. Hey, how am I stacking up? How do I look? What are some of the misconfigurations I have on my machines in my inventory? It's going to help me strengthen my cloud posture. We're going to track to a compliance with built-in compliance policies. Now, we also have the option of doing full Defender, integrated with everything. Cloud workload protection. It gives me advanced intelligence. Protection for Azure, hybrid resources, all those workloads. Defender for Cloud is going to give me extra security. That's where I'm going to get my just-in-time, just enough, all of those things. Those things, again, you can get a free 30-day trial, but we also have Arc. It's not just about Azure. What if you have AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud? Azure Arc's going to allow me to push those policies against those other cloud environments. So when we look at the big picture, where is it focused? So you can see that red outline. Defender for Cloud is going to focus on things like on-prem, my cloud services, multi-cloud, SQL databases, firewall enforcement. This is the area that cloud's going to help you, along with Security Center, to secure. It's going to allow you to actually get a deep dive picture of everything that's happening in your environment. What do I need to fix? Where do I need to fix it? Those are the things we're going to be looking at. It has nice, pretty dashboards. Most people are visually stimulated. Most people aren't going to be able to sit in a log analytics engine and watch the screen scroll by and say, yep, that's what I want to see. It's just not how we're built. Those visual tools are going to say, that looks off to me. Let me look at that. It's going to catch your eye. It's almost like your single pane of glass. Again, everybody says that. But these are true statements. We're going to get that single pane. What is my Defender for Cloud telling me about my security posture? It's integrated with Defender. All those workloads, hybrid, other cloud platforms that we're looking at. These are tools to help you secure those resources. How do you know that you're out of compliance with your policy if you can't see your policy? I've done that. Tom's done that, where you actually have to go and you have to start looking and pen testing and doing all of those different things that, oh, hey, look, this port's open. Oh, we should close that because it doesn't need to be open. This is going to help you do all of that without having to go look at every single resource independent. Defender for Cloud is going to fill 3 vital needs for every organization. It's going to continually assess all of those. It's going to look at your posture. It's going to identify and track vulnerabilities. Okay, what am I vulnerable to? Did I do the newest, latest, greatest CVEs? Did I read all of those? Well, I don't really have to until it tells me to. It's good to do that. to know your environment, it's going to help me harden all my resources. Secure. Look at those services. Hey, I built many on-prems, and I'm a big believer in it should only be running the resources it needs to do its job, whether it's a VM or physical hardware. So what are those extra things that are running that shouldn't be? Is it authenticating users, whether it's an application or a server? Multi-factor is a good idea. It's going to tell me if I'm not using multi-factor. And then defend. Detect and resolve threats on those resources, those workloads, those services that are critical to my infrastructure. Those are things I want to know. As a security guy, that's all I look at every day. How do I secure this infrastructure? We all know we have to balance business with security. That's not what I'm saying here. Hey, you may be looking at a NIST 853 policy, and you say, you know what? We're going to create an exception for this server because if we do what it tells us to do, we're going to break it. We don't want to do that. But knowing that there's an exception is part of the battle. So we look at that continuous assessment. It's analyzing my security posture. That secure score tells me at a glance how I'm benchmarked against those policies. The higher the score, the better. It gives me recommendations to harden those resources. It's customized, prioritized with tasks for your posture. You can implement the recommendations. You can create an exception. And it's fast. If I want to remediate, I just click fix. And we're going to get into that. Or I can just say fix it. Yep, do that. That works for me. Detect and resolve threats. That's huge. We want to be able to detect threats in near real time. Is anything ever real time? No. We've got a little delay between the time it's detected versus the time it makes it to the console. But again, near real time. It's better than waiting 6 days. Hey, I didn't even know that alert triggered. I've seen that too, because nobody ever looks at the console. They appear in the portal. Defender for Cloud can send email notifications. You can send your alerts to a SIM, your source solution, IT management. What's required in your environment? It's customizable. You don't have to be using Sentinel. You could be using a different SIM, a different source solution. Send the logs. Set up those log feeds. Automation is key, but we want the right automation. You don't want it to be remediating things it shouldn't have. That's where exceptions come in. But you can see here, Defender for Cloud. I have all these cool panels. My secure score, how am I benchmarked? Hey, look, 54. What's my score? What are the number of things being continuously assessed? My workload protections, how do I look? My regulatory compliance. Hey, how am I benching against my compliance requirements? My firewall manager, if I have firewalls, how do I look there? My inventory, what's my inventory look like? I don't know, we got a lot of red here. You might want to look at that. Information protection using Purview. Insights, the things that it's seeing so that I can see what's going on in my environment. We're going to get into these panels. We're going to look at these. That security posture management with that secure score is going to tell me how I'm doing. We remediate those and our score goes up. Hey, we're looking pretty good. Say we're at 75%. Hey, you know, we started at 40%. We've come up 35 points. That's pretty good. Are we perfect? No. There's always room for improvement. But we gain insight to the state of our cloud workloads. We address those vulnerabilities with prioritized recommendations. Hey, this is a low threat. No, I want to do high threat. What are the highest things? They're going to be prioritized. I can do it within minutes. Remember, I can click a fix button. I don't even have to understand it. I want to, I don't have to. Just say fix it. Kind of reminds me when my son, he'd break something and he'd just come to me, fix it. Okay. That's what we do. We speed up that regulatory compliance. If you have auditors, they're going to look for this. Why wouldn't I want to be compliant? So I can show them, look, here's where we're at. Yep, we still have a couple of policies to work on. What's an auditor look for? Okay, PCI, your ability to take credit cards. If I get audited against PCI, I need to come up with a plan. Otherwise, they're going to take my ability to take credit cards away from me. So if I come up with a plan, next time they audit me, I may not be perfect, but if I'm doing good against that plan we all agreed to, they're not going to take that credit card ability away because I made progress. Granular control. I decide. We as a team decide. Hey, let's get this score up. What do we need to focus on? Let's harden those identities. Let's harden those devices. At the same time, you see, we're still moving towards that zero trust. So we look at Secure Score. Again, continually assessing all the resources, subscriptions, and the organization for those issues. It's going to aggregate all those findings into a single score that I can look at a glance. I can go see why it's saying, hey, you didn't get a perfect score. Okay, how do I remediate that? We drill into it. So I look at my secure score, 47%. Okay, I look at my subscriptions. So this last one's doing better than these two. So what do? I can then go look at these and look at the recommendations. View those recommendations. Now you have to fulfill all those recommendations before your score will change. All of the resources associated to one, you have to fulfill. To increase that score, again, you're gonna go to the recommendations page. We have all these recommendations here. Enable encryption at rest. So it's telling me that I have data that's being stored that is not encrypted. So what do I need to do? I need to go in and look at all of those 80 resources and turn encryption on in order for my score to go up. We're gonna look at all those security controls. When we look at any environment, whether it's your cloud, your on-prem, what's the number one thing that usually causes a breach, that usually causes us to be out of compliance? It's usually a misconfiguration. We're all human. Hey, I forgot to do that. Misconfigurations are something that are easily rectified based on our policies, based on our business needs. Are we going to file an exception? Are we going to fix it? Is it a machine, a network, an app, a service? What is it? We're monitoring it all. And we're going to go in there and we are going to remediate that. Compliance. Again, compliance is huge. Whether it's against our own policies, whether it's against some type of compliance standard like HIPAA, PCI, whatever that might be. By default, Microsoft applies its own benchmark, security best practice based on NIST 853. So we look at that and say, okay, I have a security best practice. I just deployed my cloud. Got all these different resources. That benchmark policy is automatically deployed, and it's automatically assessing your environment, and it's automatically saying, hey, you're not compliant, or you are compliant. It's a control. I can actually use those controls against Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. It's dynamic. It's always going to change. I can fix something. Just remember, you got to give it about 24 to 48 hours before that score changes during those assessment periods. So it's fully aligned to that policy, that benchmark. So it's looking at all of the policies. You can apply your own policies, but I'd highly recommend you secure against that benchmark first. It's no different than doing zero trust all at once. You're going to be confused. You're going to be bouncing between, okay, let's secure identity, devices, apps, data. No, do one thing at a time. So get good with this benchmark policy. Then look at other policies, layer those in. Then see how you stack up against those policies. Chances are, if you do the Microsoft benchmark policy, the Microsoft security policy, you're going to be probably in really good shape if you add like a PCI or a HIPAA policy. There might be a few things, but the whole idea is get right, so to speak, with security best practice, with a standard. Create your exceptions, do all of that, and then put the other policy in place so that you can drill in and see what it's telling you. Why are you not compliant? Compliance is huge, not just for industry, not just for auditors, but for us from a security perspective. It's about plugging those holes, minimizing that blast radius. Hey, okay, so they got on this one box, but because of all the hardening you did here, creating all of this against a policy, maybe they weren't able to laterally move throughout your environment. It'll be easier to catch them because we'll see them. So we drill into compliance. We look at these standards. Here it says identity management. Okay, so manage these identities, right? And we can see we need to look at one. We need to look at an app and see why it's telling us that we need to secure it. View the recommendations. Spend some time in here. Again, got 10 jobs, how much time can you spend in here? But you need to spend time in here to secure that environment. Doesn't do you much good to bring everything into a cloud if it's going to be accessible by everybody anytime they want. It's about locking it down. All sorts of different policy benchmarks that you can use. Again, NIST, SWIFT, UK, Azure, CIS. Again, there are a ton of pre-built benchmark policies that you can apply so that you don't have to start from scratch. Best practice security. NIST is a great place to start. Firewall managers. looking at your hubs and networks, looking at those firewalls. Again, the Azure Firewall Manager. How many virtual hubs? What do they look like? How many firewall? Where's it covering? DDoS protection, distributed denial of service. I remember when that was so common with botnets. Botnets were huge. I used to teach a security class all around botnets. Imagine you are one of the first employees hired by Dell 20 years ago, 25 now. And all you did was build systems. Through attrition, you're going to lose some, all of that. But still, you decide to retire. You got all those systems. You can go home, punch a key on your keyboard and say, come talk to me. I could sell time. And a big thing they used to use them for, large distributed botnet networks, was distributed denial of service. It's still a commonly used technique. I want to take you offline. Gibson Research Corporation, grc.com. If you're interested in denial of service, go look up GRC. He wrote an article, Steve Gibson, about how he got taken offline by somebody he called a script kiddie. Nobody could get to his website. It's very destructive. These are things you want to look at. Utilizing that Azure Virtual WAN Hub. Again, creating that hub and spoke architecture, secured virtual hubs, your virtual network. I mean, this is a standard Azure network. You create, you manage. Virtual hubs are managed by Microsoft. Again, these are the things we need to take into consideration when we're even building it. How do I secure that infrastructure? How do I make sure that we're not exploitable from the minute I deploy it? We put security measures in place. These are the things we start looking at. This is what SecureScore brings to the table. I can see all that. It's in one dashboard. What about my inventory? How do I see all of my devices? I don't know every device that's deployed. I certainly don't know if I go to somebody else's network or if I'm the new hire. I don't know all of that. How can I learn? It's a great learning tool, but it also shows me a single view of everything that's monitored. Okay? My entire digital estate. Hopefully everything's in here. May not be, but it's easily filtered. It's easily cross-referenced. I can take it and export it into a CSV. I can manage those resources directly from my cloud dashboard. I can see everything. I can build reports, workbooks, all of those things that I would need. I can assign tags, and you should assign tags. What is this resource? Tagging, so that I can filter what I'm looking for. Hey, this is XYZ service. Hey, this server is the XYZ service SQL server, whatever the tag. So I know what these boxes are. Inventory is critical. I have to know the resources I have so I know if I'm protecting them from vulnerabilities. It provides me recommendations on how to remediate those vulnerabilities for those resources. Anytime there's an outstanding recommendation, they're going to appear in that inventory. So looking at things, total resources. What's the total number of resources connected to Security Center? Okay, why is that important? Well, gee, I thought I had 1,500 resources, and this is telling me I got 1,605. Where'd those other 105 come from? I was told we only had 1,500. Now I got to go look at them. Unhealthy. What's unhealthy? Well, it has a recommendation. Hey, you're not using MFA. Hey, you've got, a patch that hasn't been applied. Unmonitored. Maybe you have resources that are having issues. They have the log analytics agent deployed, but it's not sending any data or any health information. Okay, I know I need to go look at that. Why? Why isn't it talking to me? Why isn't it talking to Defender for Cloud? Any subscription in that scope that haven't yet been connected to Security Center. Those are my unregistered subscriptions. I need to look at that. Are they supposed to be? Do we have a different solution for that subscription? I hope not, because then I'm blind. Looking at my inventory, I can see everything. If I've deployed this correctly and I have multiple clouds, I have AWS, I have Google, all of that, I can see all of those servers. I can see all of the devices. Unhealthy resources. I've got 318 unhealthy resources. It's pretty important to know why they're unhealthy. Again, looking at the state of my environment, working it methodically. It allows me to filter by just about anything I want, including, oh yeah, those tags. What am I specifically focusing on here to remediate? And I can filter all the way down to where I need to be. Again, I can add non-Azure, even if they're not in Azure. Hybrid environments. Those are the things we're going to be looking at. My inventory, you can see, quick little demo here. Hey, we've identified a machine tagged with environment. What are we going to do? Okay, so let's go select what we want. Filter it even further. Go even further down. Filter it by the tag. These are things that we build filters, get where we need. That tag production. How many machines tag, and we can see we've identified that specific machine. Then we can look at, okay, what's it trying to tell me about that machine? Bob called me and said, hey, you need to look at this box. Okay, no problem. I can do that right from the dashboard, from the inventory. Now again, information protection. This tile shows resource types that have been scanned by Purview. Purview, yes, you have to buy. It's a unified data governance service. So you can manage and govern on-prem, multi-cloud, software as a service, and easily create a holistic, up-to-date map of your landscape. Automated discovery, sensitive data classifications, end-to-end data lineage. With those insights, different officers, so to speak, in your organization can get a bird's eye view of how we look, how we're going against, our policies. Are we secure? Have you taken into consideration all those governance aspects? These are things we want to look at. This dashboard right here summarizes that. It's also going to take in Defender for Endpoint and Azure Information Protection in this dashboard. Anytime it is an endpoint, it will be designated with the location type of endpoint. Other than that, you're going to see however it's defining it. This one is a directory. Again, I can see everything all the things. What did they see? Look, I've got credit card numbers. I've got German driver's licenses, all sorts of different things. What's the risk? It's a medium risk on this first one for this client. Okay, drill into it. Look at it. Why is it at risk? These are things we want to know. So again, getting through all the data, getting through those recommendations. Okay, so now we're at recommendations. How do I implement a fix? Well, if it has an automated remediation that you can do, it's pretty simple. From the list of recommendations, look at that little lightning bolt, select it. From the unhealthy, you can click remediate. Confirm, check all the ones you want, and then say fix. That's it. That's all you have to do. All these little arrows. Yep, hey, I want you to fix this for me. Launch that action from the setting on your behalf. And it's going to go out and it's going to fix them. Of course, I'd always recommend reading. I'm a big believer in understanding what I'm fixing. But you can see I can select all of them that it's saying need to be remediated. Simply remediate. So I can see what it's going to do. I can select all the systems, click the button, and I'm done. Multi-cloud for Defender for Cloud. So Azure Arc. So I can use Azure Arc's agent, and I can deploy that to manage and govern by my policies from Azure against all servers, any cloud. Azure Arc for Kubernetes. Azure Data Services. So I can deploy services in moments, anywhere. Faster. Better security, because I already know this is secure. So if I need it in Google, I deploy it. Kubernetes is important. It's quickly become the de facto standard of how people want to deploy. Hybrid, again, looking at my posture, looking at that secure score, asset management, regulatory compliance, server protections for my Defender for VMs, threat detection. It also has a built-in scanner to scan, powered by Qualys. So I can scan those servers automatically. Automation, again, looking at all of that automation and management at scale. SIM integration. Most people have a SIM now. Again, it's about getting all those logs in, use cases, business need, all of that. And I can export all that. I can see what's happening in my environment. Again, I can see at the top of this overview all my AWS accounts, my GCP projects on Google, plus all my Azure. Single pane of glass. That's what we want. We don't want to be managing 5 different consoles, 10 different consoles. We try to scale it down. I don't want to have to go look at 5 different places. I want to be able to see it in a single place, taking all my Defender for cloud products, Endpoint, SQL, servers, Internet of Things, apps, all of it, containers. And then I want to be able to feed those logs to Sentinel or whatever, so that I can design use case for detection. So I can see all those logs. I integrate it. So I can actually have an XDR SOAR SIM solution where I can automate. Again, looking at all of the information that can be ingested. Log analytics is important. Yeah, I secured my whole posture. But what did I do with those logs? How do I show an auditor I'm storing those logs? I have to have a log solution, have to be able to search it and prove it. Sentinel fulfills that need. I can go in and show them every single log. They could say, well, I want to see XYZ, and I write a query and I show them XYZ. It's all about getting that data, automating it so that, hey, look, we saw, Defender said this and that, and okay, so let's create a playbook and go and automatically remediate it. I didn't have to do anything other than create the playbook. It all went to Sentinel. Sentinel has the playbook, saw the incident, boom, generated and said, yep, block it. Or send email and tell the administrator to go over there and do it. Whatever. Add that IP to a block list. Again, it's comprehensive threat protection. It's across any server, any cloud, any service, any product. We're looking at deploying all of that so that we can manage it in one place. You can see general availability, SQL, but you also have some preview, Postgres databases, MySQL, MariaDB. Managing from a central location, virtual networks, key vault. Hey, whoever gets your key, they've got the key to the kingdom. If I can break your keys, probably should deploy a firewall to protect it as well. Workload protection. Again, we have workloads. We want to protect those workloads. It's intelligent protection for on-prem, cloud, other cloud providers, all of that. We want to see what workloads we have. We want to protect those workloads. And it's a central point. One product deploying each piece of it. I can see my whole cloud environment, my on-prem, hybrid. Again, is everybody all in the cloud? Not always. Most are hybrid. We still have on-prem. And I can monitor it all from here, deploying the appropriate log analytics agents and products. Defender for servers, specifically around servers. We can reduce the number of open ports with just-in-time control access, just enough access to allow them to do whatever they want. We can block malware with adaptive application controls, protect Windows servers, integrated with Defender for Endpoint, protects Linux boxes as well across multiple clouds. We protect both Linux and Windows. Vulnerability management, it's built in. Defender for servers has built-in Qualys scanners that will look and scan those boxes to see if they have any vulnerabilities. And we'll see that in the interface. These are things that we start looking at. What am I vulnerable to? What ports are open? How do I close those ports? These are all things we want to look at. So we're looking at protecting SQL servers anywhere, anytime, any cloud. SQL injection, all sorts of threats people might use to try and exploit those. So we use Azure Arc, enabled for SQL Server. Again, any cloud, one product. Defender for storage. Okay, it's not just about what's on that server. What have you stored? What information me as a bad guy can go look at? Everybody wants to protect their databases, but what if I've got storage? What's being stored? It helps me harden those storage containers, my data lakes, all of that, file shares, everything, so that I can actually secure these containers just like I did my SQL database. I want to harden them. It uses AI. It uses threat intelligence from Microsoft. Hey, those trillions of signals, that's what it's looking at. That's what it's using. those scanners will scan Docker images as well. And they don't use static. They use dynamic analysis to look at that file as a whole. It's seamless deployment and configuration. It's going to scan it. Look at all those ACR registries, all the images, get visibility to those vulnerable images. Static analysis, dynamic analysis is way better than static. Done enough sandbox appliances. This process, again, is going to reduce that false positive. Show me that it's really vulnerable. Again, Defender for Kubernetes. Looking at my AKS cluster, hardening those clusters. Looking at that benchmark, make sure that I am benching against the Docker CIS benchmark on those containers. Detect suspicious behavior in Kubernetes workloads. Unique agentless approach. Admission control. Manage and audit best practices for those workloads. These are things Defender for Kubernetes is going to bring to the table. Looking at an attack matrix for Kubernetes specifically. Again, there are tons of different ways, things people are going to do. We have initial access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, and finally, what's the impact? So what's the initial access? Credentials, compromised image, config file, a vulnerability that we didn't scan for, exposed, server, an SSH server running on there. Oops, that was a misconfiguration. What are people trying to do? How are they going to get there? You all can read about this matrix. I won't go one by one. But again, multiple threat vectors are what we're going to be looking at. And that's important. What's the blast radius from the zero trust model? We want to limit what they can do if they do get in. Protect any workload on Azure. Protect your resource manager. After all, this is where you're deploying stuff from. You're managing resources. We want to protect it. Defender for DNS. Hey, there's all sorts of exploits out there for DNS. There's all sorts of botnets. There's all sorts of different things. Black hole attacks, you name it, they're out there. Defender for Key Vault. Again, critical. If you're storing keys in Key Vault, you need to be protecting it because those are the keys to the kingdom. The Internet of Things. Looking at all of those assets, the vulnerabilities, device CVEs, open ports, leveraging machine learning, behavioral analysis. Microsoft Defender for IoT actually incorporates agentless technology because they purchased a company called CyberX. It does greenfield, it does brownfield devices, and it integrates with Sentinel. So you can feed all that analytic traffic over there so that you can look to see if you are vulnerable. These are all things that we look at. These are all things that are extremely important. It's all integrated into a solution. So actually Microsoft commissioned a study. Yes, this was on Security Center, but hey, just remember, it's a rename. But they commissioned Forrester to do a study about return on investment, payback, all of those different things. Now, I'm a security guy. So, net present value and all of that doesn't mean a whole lot to me. because I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a financial guy. I get return on investment. How long is it going to take me? But they commissioned a study that's definitely worth reading about the cost. So Security Center, Defender for Cloud, savings and benefit. They discovered there was a 25% reduction in security breaches. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't care where you're at as a admin, as a security person, but if I could reduce 25% of my breaches, even the risk of a breach, I'm in. I actually, many years ago in a land company far, far away, deployed Endpoint. And it had antivirus, it had Firewall, and it had host-based intrusion prevention. Most people bought this product because they wanted the host-based firewall. And I said, if I could show you a way to protect your box 50% without ever turning on that firewall, would you be interested? Every single customer said, well, heck yes. So what I did is I took all signatures that were not buffer overflow, because at this time, 50% of all exploits started with a buffer overflow. And I put the policy in protect mode. So at that point, they were 50% protected without ever turning on a firewall or any other configuration in that product. That's pretty good. 50% reduction in time to threat mitigation. That's awesome. We've seen it could take months to year to investigate a threat, a breach, and fix it. Especially if they were able to do lateral movement. So 50% of my time that I don't have to spend analyzing logs, getting images of systems, analyzing those, hey, that's a big savings for me to focus on something else. 30% reduction in policy and compliance management time. Well, I know my bosses would like that. I know Stan would be all over that. 30%. So that I can say, yep, we're compliant, boom, because I did it from a dashboard. A $216,000 annual reduction in total tool spend. Hey, the less tools we have, the better off I am. Less I have to manage as a security guy. And I just saved the company $216,000 on average. My boss is going to love me. Hey, I said I need $1 million. I only needed 800,000. Awesome. And we're good. Yep, we're good. Who doesn't want to do that? And the return on investment over 3 years had a payback of less than 6 months. So you can see here, 6 months. Where did we go? Cost 1.1 mil. Saved $3.6 million in that cost. My net present value. Again, I'm not an accounting guy, so, but I am all about this. I'm all about my workload because I've got 10 other jobs for my company. And that's where it really plays out. Defender for cloud, one solution, multiple vectors, pulling me to a zero trust model. Okay. So I'll turn it back over to my boss. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat window.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. That was super informative. I really appreciate this. And also, I paid for everybody on the call. I pasted the link to that report, that Forrester report. So everybody has that available. So, we've got some great information here. There's, definitely a lot to sort of take in. We understand that. Talon does have a security assessment where we can kind of go in, do a little bit more deeper dive on some of these areas that Mark talked about. One of those first things is more education, right? Working with you and working through, hey, what is the cloud adoption framework? Let's make sure that the foundational piece of Azure is sound and ready to go. What's your backup strategy? What's your DR? Do you have hub spoke topologies in terms of, the network? All those things, right? I like to hear Mark use the example of, hey, you can have your home security ADT, but if you got paper doors and walls, I don't know how much it's going to help, right? So Zero Trust Framework, we dive into a workshop with that, and then Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Secure Score, an education series on how to train you around that. And then we really roll up our sleeves and go through all these different areas that Mark touched on today, and the number 2 area here. And then coming out of that, you're presented with not only what the cost would be for remediation, if you have to add Azure services, what the cost would that be on a recurring basis, and then a remediation plan, either done by us, or if you take that and say, hey, I've got it, Talon, thanks, we're going to go ahead and remediate that. So that's kind of the next steps there. If you guys are interested, please reach out and we'd be happy to help you out with that. There's my contact information, and we really appreciate everybody's time today, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.